Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek Interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Dr. Adam Link, and I'll be speaking to him about, technical people speaking with non-technical people, and we're going to explore what breaks down when engineers struggle to explain their work to non-technical stakeholders and how those breakdowns affect trust, alignment, and business outcomes. And I'm hoping that the conversation also covers what managers look for in engineers who are ready for more influence and practice habits that help technical ideas land with the right audiences. So welcome to Teach the Geek Interviews, Adam.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. So, first question, what types of technical decisions are your teams responsible for making in your organization?
Yeah, great question. So I'm here as a senior engineering manager at Coinbase. I lead our FinOps team and our Cloud Center of Excellence. So FinOps is basically the discipline of looking at your cloud spend and making sure your business is getting the value for your cloud spend that you are paying out. And the Cloud Center of Excellence is really a discipline inside of a company that makes sure you are architecting your systems according to the best practices in the cloud. So we basically interface with engineers all up and down the management chain inside the company.
Okay, I'm curious then, how often do the decisions that you are making need to be explained to non-engineers?
Yeah, so we frequently work with our partners in finance. That's actually one of the things that the FinOps practice encourages is multiple personas. So you have a, persona of an engineer when you're talking about FinOps, and you have a persona of a finance person when you're talking about FinOps. And concepts do not often overlap between the two.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. So I'm curious then, when engineers struggle to communicate with non-technical stakeholders, what does that typically look like?
Yeah, so I've usually seen a couple of mistakes when engineers communicate with non-technical stakeholders. The first mistake is basically going too deep too quickly. So, as one engineer to another, right, if I mention something about, well, we're running into an out of memory error and we think that increasing garbage collection is going to help, right? You and I both know exactly what I just said, right? Out of memory error means that we're maxing out the amount of RAM on the box, and garbage collection doesn't refer to the big trucks that come around and pick up the garbage on the curb, right? It refers to the technical garbage collection, freeing up memory. When you start talking at that level, though, with someone who's not an engineer, what ends up happening is their defense mechanism starts to go up and they actually start to lose trust in what you're saying. So if you go too deep too quickly, you risk alienating a non-business person. And most of the time, my team is talking to a director or vice president level non-engineering person. And so when you start talking in words that they don't understand, a senior leader like that doesn't like to look like they don't know what they're talking about. And so they will attempt to gloss over the fact that they don't understand what you're saying by either dismissing what you're saying or pushing back very heavily, but in a way that doesn't really make sense to you, right? They'll just start pushing back and just disagreeing with everything you say. And you're going, well, what is going on here? Well, what they're doing is a defense mechanism because they don't want to admit they don't know what you just said.
That is 100% true. When I started the second job as a product development engineer, I had to give presentations on a monthly basis to management. And those first few presentations were rather rough, Adam. And ultimately, my project was canceled. But even before then, what would happen is I'd get a whole lot of questions afterwards that I thought I'd answered during the presentation. So when you were talking, it really reminded me of that time of getting that pushback, that heavy pushback. And we're talking the CEO, CMO, COO, C fill in the blank O, all these C's in this conference room, listening to me and other project leads talk about project status. And I sat in on some of the other presentations given by other project leads, and similar things would happen. And I think you're right. Ultimately, we're not putting things in a way that these people can understand. And if they can't understand, well, now we're getting all this pushback. And if we had just put it in a way that they could have understood before, well, maybe they've been nicer to us.
Exactly. Yeah. I mentioned that I see two mistakes. So the second mistake I see frequently is it's actually a parallel mistake to going too deep too early. But the mistake is not going deep enough. So we have a particular vice president who comes from a very strong engineering background. And this particular individual, you can talk API design very, very technical with him. As long as you're overlapping a programming language, like he writes code. And so when you're giving a presentation to a non-engineering audience, you may want to suss out if any of those individuals have a background in engineering where they may suddenly understand everything you're talking about very deep in a particular vertical. And the reason I say particular vertical is, if you start talking very deep, back-end programming to this one individual, they will understand what you're saying. You talk very deep front-end programming, and they will no longer understand, right? And so, especially the more senior an individual is, they had their technical experience, they had their technical work that they did before they got into management. And as long as you stay in their lane of what they used to do technically, they're right there with you, right? But if you move out of their technical lane, all of a sudden you're going to get that major pushback again. And it might actually even be worse because now you've gone from a domain they understand, and now you clearly moved into a domain that they don't understand. And now they're going to look like an idiot in front of their peers, right? So it's the same problem all over again.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's even worse because they're probably worried about the other people who aren't technical looking at them as, how do you not understand this? You're technical too, right? But then yeah, you're right. They probably do then to think, oh, I don't want to look stupid in front of all these other people. They think that I know when it turns out I don't know. And so now, yeah, you're definitely going to get that pushback, man. It just ultimately it comes down to knowing your audience and giving presentations with that information beforehand as opposed to just assuming.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So how did your communication responsibilities change once you became an engineering manager?
Yeah. So, as an individual contributor, I was responsible for communicating the technical details, right? It was a lot of, very low down, pull up a terminal, right, or an IDE and show the code and explain the code, explain the design decisions. As a manager, my job is more alignment around the concept, not the implementation details. So, if you want to camel case or lowercase or all caps your variables, that's an implementation detail. I don't particularly care, right? Whether or not you put an underscore in between words in your variable names, honestly, that's not my battle anymore. What my battle is do we even build this feature in the first place? And so what I end up doing is I've basically taken a step up from the code, and now I start looking at the why from a business perspective. So one of the biggest things that changed when I became a manager is I became responsible for the why that code exists. And having to explain how that code benefits the business is very different than debating the implementation of the code itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, when communication goes wrong between technical and non-technical people, what is often the real cost to the business?
Ooh, it's heavy. It's actually really heavy. When a technical individual is not able to communicate to a non-technical person, the result, and typically for me, most of my communications are upward. So I'm talking to people who are, a couple levels above me. And a failure to communicate at that level means that increased scrutiny and increased oversight is coming my way. And basically, what happens is, a vice president, let's use a vice president, will say, okay, I don't fully understand what this senior manager told me. I don't fully trust what they're telling me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my team and task them to oversee this. So what that means is I get a director who now knocks on my door and says, hey, I need a weekly check-in with you. And a weekly check-in is really management code for I don't fully understand what you're doing, or I don't fully believe that you're able to deliver what I think you're going to do. But either way, I'm going to keep tabs on you once a week. And what I want to hear is an update every week. And the worst possible outcome of one of these check-in meetings is I don't think weekly is enough. We should move this to bi-weekly. Or I've even had some projects where it goes every 24 hours. And those are really high pressure projects where you have to, every 24 hours have a new check-in. And what that means is as a manager, you're not turning around to your technical folks and you are just driving your technical team because you need a deliverable every 24 hours that isn't code, but it's a business outcome. And that's really tough. So that's what happens when you don't convince a non-technical person of what you're talking about and that you are able to deliver.
Wow. I, I'm curious then, do you think that a person who is a technical person who just starts in an organization understands that that's what's happening? And if not, what what can be done for them to fully understand that that's exactly what's happening?
It took me years to figure this out. And I didn't fully understand what those check-in meetings were for until I was a manager. And I took a look at my employees' schedule and I went, huh, that's what I'm doing to them. But that really is, as a new engineer, the more touch points you have with your manager where they are coming to you and saying this is a standard check-in, right? um, those can be good and those can be bad, right? If your project is going great, what they're looking for is they want to celebrate wins, right? They want touch points that are wins. If your project is not going well, they want touch points that are tell me what the problem is. I want to catch the problem early. I want to help solve that problem, right? And so as a new engineer, you have to kind of figure out, why am I being asked when I'm being asked? Is it because I have a supporter who wants to celebrate my wins? And if that's the case, you can say, look, I just need a day or two or a week, and I'll come back with something that works. But if you have someone who is worried, who's checking in because they're concerned, then it's really in your best interest to say, what is the root cause here? Because the root cause is never you're not working enough, right? Unless that's truly the case. But usually what it is some misunderstanding in what you're delivering or the way that you're going about your work or, the impact you're going to have. And as a result, that check-in meeting is just the point in which your, non-technical stakeholder or your manager can sit there for 30 minutes and just have FaceTime with you and say, what are you doing? I just want the story, right? And like I said, it took me years to figure that out. And I will say, as a new engineer, your single best resource to help with these check-in meetings or to help get your point across is going to be your senior engineer because they have more experience, or your manager because they talk the business, right? And so as a new engineer, one of the most important things you can do is make sure your manager and your senior technical staff are on the same page before you get into the meeting.
I'm curious, Adam, what is I guess, let me see. How much does communication ability affect an engineer's ability to get promoted or be trusted with bigger problems?
So for big tech, and this is like your magnificent seven, like Amazon, Meta, Google, stuff like that. There are multiple levels of software engineer. As a new software engineer, the first couple levels are almost like gimme promotions, right? You just have to show up, do your job, improve your craft, deliver code, and you'll get a couple promotions. Once you move from a senior to a staff position, that's when the world starts to change. As a staff engineer, communication and your soft skills become incredibly important. So really, if you want to be thought of as a leader, if you want to go even up to like principal engineer, distinguished engineer, your communication and presentation skills are almost more important than your ability to code. Because at the end of the day, a principal engineer, they might be writing some code, but most of the time what they're doing is selling a vision, a highly technical vision, to large swaths of the organization to get those engineers on board with what they want to build. And that's all communication and presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, that makes perfect sense. And I would hope that the people that are coming into organizations as new engineers would understand that. Is that something, again, that comes with time, or do you think that that's something that is known coming in?
That's something that comes with time. Um, One of the things that I'm actually really proud of with my team in particular, And I've managed 30 plus folks, or I should say, I manage 30 plus folks right now. One of the things I'm really proud of is every single one of my senior engineers knows how to present. And what we do is we take a chance internally on our team, and we'll do like, once a week, a brown bag lunch. And I try to get a junior engineer to present to the rest of us. Or we have internal conferences for our company, and I'll encourage my team to sign up and talk. There was one conference we had where I think like 10% of the talks were given by someone on my team, right? And like that was a huge number of talks, but it was just basically we all came up with something we wanted to talk about. We all submitted a talk. And what this leads to is I've had engineers, including myself, that present at like Amazon's reInvent, right? So a tech conference of 60,000 plus people presenting on a large stage in front of hundreds, right? And like that is the direct outgrowth of those skills where you talk to your team on a brown bag lunch and you just keep doing it. I mean, the guys that were up on stage with me, this was not their first presentation, right? We'd all been presenting before. And so when we talked at reInvent, it was like, well, yeah, we're just up on stage again. We felt totally at ease because we're no strangers to being on stage.
That's excellent that you all have that program that for engineers to take advantage of. Do you ever come into, well, you said at least in for one of those conferences, it was 10% of the talks were given by your engineers. Do you have engineers on your team that perhaps aren't all that keen to get to do presentations? And do you promote it to them anyway, telling them what the benefits are? Or do you just kind of lead them to their devices and just say, well, I guess they don't like presentations?
Yep. We have a term called voluntold. It's so sometimes, yes, if I have junior engineers that do not want to present, I will volunteer them. Congratulations, you're present. And honestly, I do it lightheartedly, and I will never throw somebody in a situation where it's going to be detrimental to their career. But in a group of people on our team, sometimes I will volunteer somebody, hey, you haven't presented yet. You're going to get up and you're going to talk. Maybe it's a team outing, right? Right. And we're at the company offices. It's not a public place. You're just going to get up and you're going to talk through your work. It's a subject that's really simple. They know it very well. They know it as the expert in the room. And what I'm looking for is just practice. You already know what you're talking about. You're already the expert in the room. We're not here to, grill you. You're just going to get the practice. And I've actually had a couple engineers who were hesitant about speaking, and after being voluntold a couple times, they're able to get up there and talk. They don't love it, but they can do it, right? And like then that's the skill I'm looking for. I don't care if you love it. I love it. That's why I'm here. But if you can't even get up in front of a room, that's going to limit you as an engineer, right? And so even if you hate it, you got to be able to do it.
You're a smart guy, Adam, and I'm really glad that you are volunteering some of your engineers to give presentations. Because to be very honest, this might seem contradictory, but typically not typically, but with Teach the Geek, the whole idea is to help technical people improve their presentation skills or their communication skills generally. But even myself, I don't particularly love getting up in front of people and speaking. The reason I do it is because of the benefits that come from doing it. And that's purely it. And I tell people the whole goal is for you to be seen as someone who can talk to people from outside of your group. And that's only going to benefit you, say, in moving up within an organization or getting more opportunities that you want. I mean, you could be as technically proficient as you want to be, but oftentimes the people who get those opportunities are the ones who are adept at communicating their usefulness to an organization. It's not the people who are in front of their computers all the time doing their work. And I think the earlier that an engineer understands that, well, the less likely they're going to be that disgruntled engineer who didn't get the opportunity because they just thought that their technical work would speak for itself.
That's very true. Your manager will see an all-star from technical work, right? But it's a lot harder the higher up you go to identify those all-stars versus the people who are able to communicate what they're doing. And that there's some politics in here, right? And you certainly don't want to take credit for somebody else's work. But the better that you can talk about the work you've done and the impact it's had on the business, the more real your output becomes for the people who are making promotion decisions, who are looking for that next realm of leaders in the organization.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it earlier. If even if you want to stay technical, once you get to a staff level level, you still have to be able to communicate with people. This isn't just for people who want to manage other people. Certainly, in that instance, you definitely got to be good at communicating with others because that's a big part of your job. But even if you want to stay technical, from the staff level up, well, you think just sitting in front of your computer and and writing your code is going to be good enough to move up? Well, you got another thing coming.
Exactly. Yeah, oftentimes someone in a staff or higher level position is going to be tapped by management to move into a problem area of the company, right? Like your goal is to fix what the problem is, right? That's you're basically a principal, a distinguished staff engineer. These are your special forces. They're highly technical, but they're also highly persuasive and they have a vision and they can communicate it. So as a staff engineer, you're parachuting into where the fire is. And your job is to figure out what's going on, come up with the plan to fix it, implement the plan, and then communicate that back that the fire's out. And communication there to technical and non-technical stakeholders is so important, right? Because you're usually communicating up. And ultimately, all your boss cares about is it fixed, right? What is it and is it fixed? And your job is to define what it is and tell him when it's been fixed, right? Tell him or her when it's been fixed. And if you can do that, man, the sky's the limit, right? Because now you can parachute into a product that's having a problem and you can go talk to product people and finance people and marketing people and say, hey, look, you can launch your marketing campaign next week when these two technical things drop, right? And being able to marry those two disciplines together between marketing and tech, and your CMO is going to love you, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And when ultimately when it comes down to it, if you're one of those people who's getting parachuted in and you're not able to explain in a way that the people who need to understand can understand, well, then you can get that pushback that we spoke about earlier, and then maybe they're not asking you to parachute in anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so for the people who are watching or listening to our conversation, Adam, and they think they've been convinced, getting better at communicating with others, especially those from outside my field of expertise, is something I want to get better at. Where do you think they should start?
That's a great question. I would start communicating internally with your team. If you've got a daily stand up, volunteer to run the stand up. If you've got a weekly, check-in meeting, volunteer to run that. If you've got any sort of like internal group meetings, right? So like all the backend engineers get together and talk about, what went well once a month, volunteer to present at that, right? Keep it internal, keep it inside the house, keep it inside your own company for right now, and keep it at people your same level. That way, when you freeze up on stage, when you suddenly forget what you're talking about, right? When you just get the sweats and and I've seen this, right? When you drench through your shirt with sweat, right? It's in front of your friends. And honestly, no one is going to really care. Or if they remember it in 5 years, it just becomes a funny story, right? Stay away for your first talks. Stay away from the high pressure situations about things you don't know yet, right? Don't attempt to go give a talk about zoology if you're a programmer, right? Like you don't know the topic, you're gonna have to remember a speech, right? Like stick within your lane, stick with stuff that you can talk about without a script, without rehearsing. And that's a great place to start because then you're just focusing on can I get up in front of a group of people and talk? And it's going to be nerve wracking. And you're going to feel like your voice is cracking and being weird, and you're going to get shakes. And all that is normal. Every single presenter on stage feels the exact same way. If you look at my hands sometimes when I'm talking, you'll see a slight tremor in my fingers. And that's just the nerves. That's just the nerves talking. And eventually it goes away about halfway through the speech. But as I've looked at videos of myself, you can't really see it. You can't really tell the voice is cracking, right? You can't see externally the signs of stress that you're under internally. So don't worry about it, right? When you're up there and talking to your friends, they know and you know, but it's not coming across that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we could be way more critical of ourselves than other people can. And you're right. At least for me, my thing is the sweatings. That's why I wear sweaters. So we wear it so they can't see the sweat. The shirt underneath the sweater is completely drenched. But if you look at me, he looks pretty dry.
Yes, that is actually you talk about speaker secrets. So one of my secrets is I always wear two layers on my upper body. Same thing. I tend to sweat when I get nervous, and so if you ever look at me speaking, most times you'll never see me in a t-shirt. I'll have a sweatshirt on, I'll have a blazer on, depending on the formality of the event, but I am never wearing just a shirt. Um, I love Steve Ballmer. He's done great stuff with his life. But if you look up his first developer's speech, you can see he is sweating through his shirt profusely. And we have all been that engineer at one point in time. I just have a blazer over me so you can't see it.
Yeah, they think you're fancy too. Why not? You know?
Exactly. Yep. You get points for looking the part and you get points for sounding great, and you are just drenched in sweat underneath.
It's like you just came out the shower or something. It's gross.
Exactly.
Definitely
Yep.
been there. This has been a great conversation, Adam. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to get in touch. I'm a LinkedIn premium member, so anyone can send me a message. Just look up Dr. Adam Link on LinkedIn. It's the DR in front of my name that sets me apart on the search. I've got a PhD in computer science. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk to folks. I especially love talking about engineers getting up in front of crowds and speaking. I truly believe every engineer has the capability to stand up in front of a crowd and talk at even a conference like reInvent in front of hundreds of people, right? We all know our stuff technically. The only difference between me up on stage and the engineer in the audience is I walked up on stage. That's the
Absolutely.
difference. We all know the
Absolutely.
same stuff.
Yep, 100%. Well, everyone, this is the end of another edition of Teach the Geek Interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Neil.